Our agenda is a presentation by Colonel Buck Dellinger about affordable housing. Mr. Dellinger, I think you have a PowerPoint presentation for us. Please, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, sir.
You're hot.
Appreciate that, Mayor. I'm going to run through some slides that I presented to the Montgomery County Commission a couple weeks ago, and it relates to, as we were digging into our 5-year plan and our strategy, and we were looking at all the data that's out there, one data point really caught our attention, and it gets to the what are we going to do about it problem, and what's the city and county's approach to this. And the approach is next slide, please. I'll get my pointer together. Is the data point that caught our eye, and this is also that's been discovered by Jeff Tyndall and the Regional Planning Commission as they've been doing their long-term planning, is that 47.4% of our population that rent homes is rent burdened. And what that means is they're paying more than 30% of their income for their whatever dwelling it is that they're renting. So the HUD or the general rule is if you should be paying less than 30% of your overall income on your dwelling. That includes utilities. So if someone is paying more than that, they're rent burdened, and that's where we get at this term. So in our county, 47.4% of our renters are rent burdened, and you can see the other ratio of how people are renting and what their income levels are. So as we looked at this problem, and we think about a common terminology we commonly use is area median income, and how does this relate to area median income? And 100% area median income is the average income per household in Clarksville, Montgomery County. So it's not identified on this chart, but 100% of the AMI in our city is $58,838 per income, and that's by the 2021 and 2022 data. So on this chart, what we're trying to show is that for people making 50% and below, and 50% AMI is folks that are making less than $31,700. There are federal programs directed to them. It might not be enough, but at least someone is taking care of that, or trying to take care of that, those folks that are in that income level. Above 80%, the market is generally able to provide homes for those folks and to create homes for those folks. As that population grows, the supply of homes grows to meet that demand at the 80% AMI and above fairly efficiently and easy. So you can see where 50% AMI sets and where 80% AMI sets. So in the income between $31,700 and $50,700, there's a gap of support. And that is generally the folks that are renting homes, and that's generally the folks that are under the most pressure and have a lack of supply of homes that they can afford. So when we look at this over what's this going to look like in 2025, this is, we're extrapolating some numbers and looking where that's headed. We believe that the 80% AMI number is going to be at 73,000, and the 50% number is at 46,000 annual median income, and that's for a household. And again, that you can see where that gap is for the folks that are under the most pressure. So next slide is I'm going to show you, and this is a little hypothetical, but it's when we put those two past charts on one slide and we overlay in the green is where the inventory and market prices are. Now that's just a line. That line moves around. It's where the market is. Supply, demand, interest rates, all that affects where that green line is at. But what you would really like to see is that your inventory is perfectly overlaying your population. And if you look on the x-axis across the bottom and the y-axis, it's overlaying what those rents or mortgages would be to that would meet that curve on the orange line. So what we would like to see is that our housing curve is on top of our income curve, or the housing curve is slightly higher than that, where we would have an oversupply of houses. And so right now, as of yesterday, we got a briefing on rental multifamily. We have a 6% vacancy rate in multifamily, so that's good, that's healthy. A few months ago, it was at 10%, and just speaking with Mr. Tyndall, we have capacity to build more multifamily units that are approved across the county. If interest rates were there, it would really help us out to get those properties built. So we know we got a problem, and in this month, where there's going to be several breakout groups to try to think about how do we get to those folks that are the most burdened per their income. So one program, and this is, I'm going to county commission to ask permission to have a resolution to support pilots for low-income housing tax credit properties, which is a federal program to build multifamily units. Currently in Clarksville, Montgomery County, there's 18 projects that are low-income housing, federally supported projects. And these are not Section 8. These are projects, or Section 9, public housing. These are projects that receive federal grants to lower the cost of construction, and then the developers then must hold those rents at a rent cap rate that is set by HUD. So in the county right now, we have 18 projects of 1,611 units. We have 5 projects that do have pilots, and the reason why they have pilots, payment in lieu of taxes, and we negotiate that through the county commission, is because it offsets the grant, the federal grant, which is counted as income. So it's a small reduction in taxes to support that, but it pays them back for that grant that they receive. In the state of Tennessee, they count the grant for the federal income, that federal grant, as income, and they are forced to tax that property. The property assessor taxes that property for that grant. So the pilot removes that grant and helps us compete. Most counties across the Middle Tennessee, Davidson, Williamson County, Hamilton County, have pilot programs in place that the developers automatically know that they're going to get relief from that federal, the taxing of that federal grant. And so I'm going to county commission next Tuesday to ask them for permission to have that in place for up to $500,000 in any one year for all the projects and what they're getting in terms of abatement. And so, as you can see here, these projects are pretty good in terms of the volume that they can create. In the past 3 years, we've approved Campbell Way, which is renamed Madison Way, as a project of 76 units that'll be on Madison Street. Old Oak Plains was 33 single-family, 3-bedroom homes on Old Oak Plains in the rural part in southeast Montgomery County, and we put a pilot on Ramblewood, which that kept that property in good shape and did a rehab on that one. So in total, in the past 13 months, we've with pilot supported almost 230 units to increase the number of affordable supported housing units in the county. And each one of those was a one-off pilot, and each time I had to go to county commission to get approved for that. So just to give you where we are right now on the qualifying incomes and what the rent limits are, I'm not going to talk you through all this. I think these slides will be available to you. But these were the rents and the qualifying incomes that were set on June 15, 2023. I've got the URLs up there if anybody wants to look at all of the counties' rates. And I put up there Clarksville, Chattanooga, and Nashville so that you can have a comparison. So if someone is below 50%, or I just didn't want to overwhelm this with a bunch of numbers, but as you can look at the Clarksville box, if you're in the 65% AMI, which has an income of $30,660, you qualify for a 1-bedroom home, and your rent would be $871. And we've got these properties in our county, and we would like to increase the number of these types of properties. And I just give you a tip on how to read that chart. And so I just wanted to give you an update on where we are and what we're doing, and I'll be going to county commission.
Thank you, Mr. Dellinger. We've got time for maybe one, maybe 2 questions. Anybody have a question? Okay, thank you, sir. Very good. And you will make these slides available through the clerk. Thank you. All righty, we're now ready for next item on our agenda, Planning Commission report. Mr. Tyndall, you're up. I'm new here. First item is ordinance 22, 2022-23.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, City Council. A couple items to report out of the Planning Commission meeting this week. First case is our case number Z38-2023, application of Bill Ballou. This is 6.26 acres, currently zoned AG agricultural, requesting to go to R2. It is not an extension of the R2, but it is in the area. It's a parcel that fronts the west frontage of Needmore Road, approximately 425 feet north of Needmore and Crestview Drive intersections in City Council Ward number 8. It's a single-family parcel with one single-family home and some outbuildings. The applicant's statement is to provide for 2 additional lots next to the existing house. This is the existing house that mentions it. It is Mr. Ballou's residence at this time. He indicated that from the floor. This is Needmore Road looking towards the property from Crestview and then back in the other direction. This property is just south of Tiny Town Road as well, to give you some bearings. This is across the street on Needmore Road. Comments and concerns from the departments. Clarksville Gas and Water said the lift station in this area is at max. However, splitting 2 lots for a new home will not have an effect on the station, but any additional development may require a station upgrade in the future, and that would be done at the applicant's expense. The street department has requested a right-of-way to dedication at development stage for the slope and construction easement of Needmore Road expansion, and you can see the capacities of the school system listed. I'll make this comment this month and next month. The school system's numbers will not address the current capacities of the school till probably mid-October when they have their 40th day. They will recalibrate their numbers and get us that data for the opening of the new Kirkwood High School, which we'll see then what that does to some of the other schools in the area. So for now, we're still operating at the number at the end of last year until that's updated by them, and I'll let you know when that is updated. The applicant's estimate for this property would be 3 or 4 lots or units. Historical estimates would say 17. Again, the applicant indicates they're keeping the main home on the larger portion, and we have supplied in your notes there a sketch supplied by the applicant that shows 2 lots off Needmore, the existing home, and then a flag lot in the rear. Again, we have not reviewed that for compliance, but it does appear that that could work with the proposed zoning. Staff recommends approval. The proposed zoning is consistent with the land use plan. The proposed R2 is not out of character with the recent single-family residential development pattern in the area. Adequate infrastructure serves the site or will serve the site, and no adverse environmental issues were identified. The Planning Commission also recommended approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yeah, hi, Mr. Tyndall. So my question is, they can build 17 houses, right? I mean, no matter what they submit to us, he can do whatever. He can do up to 17. So I'm just surprised, why would we not, if the lift station is almost at max, why would we not make him fix it now? Why would we wait?
Because if he doesn't do anything, the lift station is adequate currently.
For 2 more houses.
For 2 more houses. If they do anything else, if anybody does anything else, any of the other ag in this corner of Needmore Road, if any of that develops any further than just ag, the lift station will have to get improved out in that area.
So basically, he just does this too, waits for someone else to fix it, and then puts in the rest of the houses.
I can't speak to his motives, but so back to your first question, based on the acreage, now it's a little odd-shaped lot. It's not as rectangular as some. The acreage would indicate that 17 lots could be an estimate.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we're now ready for item B, ordinance 23. Mr. Tyndall?
Planning Commission case Z40-2023. This is the application of Michael Lee Gray. 1.1 acres, currently zoned R1 and requesting to go to AGC Ag Commercial. It is not an extension of the Ag Commercial. It's a portion of a tract that fronts the north frontage of Pollard Road, approximately 680 feet west of Pollard and Dominion Drive intersection. This is in Council Ward number 4. It's a large tract with rolling hills and a metal structure and other surrounding structures. The applicant's statement is to bring the existing use as a wedding venue into compliance. This is the property in question. For full disclosure, this property was built without permitting or going through the site plan review process. When this does happen, it does trigger a series of events where the zone has to be correct first. So that's the first step. If that passes, then they will have to go back to building and code with plans. And for something of this size, go to the planning commission with a site plan and bring it up to code. And as you can see, there is an outdoor portion of it. The 1 acre, though the aerial looks a little off, does encompass the building and the area around the building. Event centers are an approved use in ag commercial. This is off Pollard Road. This is at the curve there. They use the existing driveway through their residence, also owned by the same people. It also has an entrance off of Dominion Drive that is unimproved at this time. Pollard Road looking at the other direction. And this is as you approach it. As you leave Pollard Road, the greenway would be at your back here. Department comments, no sewer is available. Grading and drainage plans would be required. They were asked to check the site distance by the street department, and it met minimum site distance at the speed limit posted. Grading and drainage plans will be required. The addition of any impervious surface will also require review by the street department. The fire department said no approvals or reviews have been granted or conducted for this project to date. No other comments were received. Staff recommends disapproval. The proposed zoning request is inconsistent with the land use plan. The adopted land use opinion map does not indicate commercial zoning in this area, and a commercial use are not in character with the surrounding development pattern. The definition of ag commercial district is intended for rural agricultural settings, and the current zoning classification is R1 single family and is the predominant use of the immediate and surrounding areas is also single family residential. No adverse environmental issues were identified as part of this application. The Planning Commission also recommended disapproval.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Councilperson Redd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Gray called me and asked me to go and look at this particular zoning, and I did. And of course, when he called me on the phone and I asked him about it, he said he has weddings and things like that. In my mind, I just had pictured a barn right there off of Dover Road. But when I went to look at it, you can't see this particular building from Pollard Road, and there is really one neighbor, and they share a driveway. I spoke with that neighbor, and he is adamantly for this rezoning because Mr. Grant, or Gray there, he has about 30-something acres that could potentially, of course, whatever 100 houses or homes, I guess somebody could put on 32 acres if it's the R1. And you can imagine what the traffic would be like. And I took a tour of the building and everything, and they have weddings. It's really a beautiful facility. And most of the time, of course, if it's a place where they have weddings and things like that, it's usually on the weekend or in the evening. So it's, if you vote against it, I understand. But the only thing that I would ask before you do vote, one way or another, please get with Mr. Gray and just go look at it. And I don't think it's the demon that is portrayed just by looking at the pictures here. It's really beautiful, and I think it's a good service to have weddings and a little place to have other type events. But I would say look at it before you vote. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilperson Zacharias, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, my colleague from Ward 4 stole my thunder. I was pretty much going to say the exact same thing. Mr. Gray reached out to me. I understand he's reached out to many of us. I might have more to say depending on what order I get to get my comments in next week. But until then, please just go out and take a look at it. Thank you.
Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tyndall, could you go over some of the things that could go into the ag commercial zoning beyond just an event center?
Sure thing. That's always a concern when you look at this. And some of the other uses would be things like a kennel or other boarding facilities with animals, veterinary use. You could have a distillery or brewery for on-site brewing or distilling. It's really meant for, again, as the planning documents say, more of a rural setting and for rural economic development.
Okay, thank you.
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I did attend the RPC meeting, and Mr. Gray made it very clear that he would work very diligently with the RPC and with building and codes and whoever to make it right. He was very clear that he didn't know the rules, and this was not an attempt to go around the rules, and I listened to him and then also spoke to him on the phone, and I felt that it was very sincere. We also have these inside, they're out in the county or in other areas, but we do have these event centers. He also indicated that he originally had put in, I think, 6 or 10 acres. I don't remember exactly how much, but a much larger. And because of the concerns addressed, he rezoned to a much smaller in order to alleviate some of the concerns. So I wanted to share that information that was put out at the meeting.
Councilperson McLaughlin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tyndall, if I'm looking at the aerial where the hashed area is, it looks like part of the building is outside of that. Is that
Yeah,
a
that,
concern?
sometimes the aerials can be off by a few feet depending on the angle that they were taken, time of year and those kind of things. So we've ground truthed it with the survey of the property, and we're comfortable that the building is inside that, even though the aerial may be off by just a little bit.
okay? Thank you.
Councilperson Allen, you're recognized.
I just have a couple questions. So the rest of the land around that, he owns that too?
Let me see if I have one that shows the property. That one's good. Okay, so the property in the bottom left of this, just below it is someone else and the access through it. The property to the north, the east, and the southeast, minus that one square in there, is owned by Mr. Gray.
Okay. And the AGC is the proper zoning for something like this venue?
A event center can go in several zones. The least impactful to a neighborhood like this would be the AGC.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comment or question, Mr. Tyndall? The only concern I've got about an event center there is we've got 1 or 2 in the city that are repeat offenders, I should say, that create problems for us in terms of noise and other things. So that's a concern. That's a concern. Thank you. All right, we're ready. Councilperson Streetman on this ordinance.
Yes, sir.
You're recognized.
Thank you, sir. I do want to add, as far as, for me, I was concerned, and which is why I asked Mr. Tyndall to talk about the different options that could go there, is I was concerned in the event that something were to happen to this building, the event center were to catch fire, tornado hit, if it was for any reason unsuccessful and something else would go in there, we've got a commercial zoning located right in the middle of a residential area. I do believe he was very sincere, as was previously stated, but that was where the concern came from for me, and it was unanimously approved, if I remember correctly. I brought the wrong packet from the other day, but that was the biggest concern for me. And if you look at the zoning map, there is absolutely no commercial of any kind anywhere on the zoning map. You've got some R4 way down below, but if the rest of that were to develop around it, you're going to have commercial property completely surrounded by single-family homes.
I'll just make 2 corrections on that. This did fail the planning commission by a vote of 4-2. And in the previous month, the gentleman did bring in 10 acres of ag commercial to take this and everything south and east of it. At that point, because of what you said and what the mayor said, the planning commission staff recommended he tried to pursue a smaller rezoning, maybe garner some additional votes, whether it's at the planning commission or at city council, because we felt that the 10.5 acres was way too much because it encompassed way more land than they currently use for that operation. So they have complied with our interest of getting it down to the minimum needed, and he's pursuing that with city council.
Councilperson Marquis, you're recognized.
Yes, I actually have a question about the compliance portion of this, because you mentioned that there's a series of events that have to happen. This is the very first event to get it to rezone. What happens if you can't get past this step, like, where do they go from there?
It becomes a really nice outbuilding on your property, I guess.
I'm sorry, it becomes a,
An outbuilding,
Okay.
a garage, maybe a guest suite, something like that. It couldn't be used if the zoning doesn't go through. If the zoning is successful, then they will go to building and codes and try to get their occupancy permit, which at that point, the fire department will check for firewalls, sprinkler systems, fire extinguishers and stuff like that. That hasn't even been done yet because this is the first step.
yeah,
Because you don't want to spend the money doing that if you're not
Yeah.
even going to get past the first step of zoning, so.
okay. So, but if it now becomes an outbuilding, they still have to figure out stuff with buildings and codes though, right?
They would likely still have to go back and get a retroactive permit for a pole barn
Okay.
structure.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're now ready for item C, ordinance 24. Mr. Tyndall, please, sir.
This is Planning Commission Case Z47, 2023, application of WPN LLC. Therese Winnington is the agent. 1.01 acres, currently zoned R3 and requesting to go to R4. It is an extension of the R4, and the property is located west of Beach Street and Mitchell Street intersection. This is in City Council Ward number 4. It's a parcel that has some mature trees and varying vegetation and several residential structures on site. The applicant's statement is to demolish the existing triplex and plat it for 12 townhomes. This is Beach Street. The dumpster and pickup truck there is where the city is currently constructing a small neighborhood park. The property is just beyond this, past where that second pickup truck is on the property. And there's the fence line between the properties. Like we said, it is heavily vegetated at the moment. There are some buildings in there if you squint really hard. And there's the garage for one of them. They're all currently rentals. And that's looking back Beach Street toward the park. Department comments or concerns. The street department stated that sidewalk would be required along the frontage upon the development stage. And no other comments or concerns. You can see the school system comments of their capacities listed. Historical estimates would be 12 units. The applicant has indicated 12 units. Again, the maximum will be 16. Staff recommends approval. The proposed request is consistent with the land use plan. The proposed R4 request is not out of character with the surrounding development pattern and is an extension of the R4 zoning district. Adequate infrastructure serves the site and no adverse environmental issues were identified. And the Planning Commission also recommended approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Any comment or question regarding ordinance 24? Seeing none, hearing none, we're ready for item D, ordinance 25. Please, sir.
Planning Commission case at Z48, 2023, application of Maxie K. West and Nicole K. West. Agent is Rosemary Calcese. This is a portion of a property, 2.3 acres. It's currently zoned R3 and requesting to go to R4. This property is located at the northwest corner of Airport Road and Tandy Drive. It also touches through another property, Fort Campbell Boulevard. This is in Council Ward number 1. It's a wooded parcel with an area encumbered by a drainage basin / flood area. That'd be localized flood area. And the applicant's statement is to be developed into a multifamily development. There's the property. If you look from Fort Campbell Boulevard past the auto body shop, the property's that tree line in the back. And then this is Airport Road approaching Tandy Drive. The property is right there with the trees on it at the corner. And then looking back Tandy Drive, there's some of the properties across from it. That whole area is zoned R2D, and the majority of stuff out there is duplexes on Tandy Drive. Even some triplexes. This is looking back Tandy towards the property where the trees are. The street department has said access from Tandy only. The street department has also listed that drainage issues at the 24 and 30-inch reinforced concrete pipe crossing Airport Road may have to be upgraded. That would be evaluated at the development stage. And the capacity of the school system properties listed. Historical estimates would be 27. We think that's incredibly high due to the topography and the fact that the frontage already is platted out for a 3 bedroom unit. So it would have the opportunity to have one or a few apartment buildings on it, but not quite sure how many until they really get in there and grade it out. Staff does recommend approval. The proposed request is consistent with the land use plan. The proposed R4 multifamily residential request is not out of character with the development pattern in the area. This request is in an area encumbered by a drainage basin, flood area, and full drainage review will be required at the development stage for the property. Planning Commission also recommended approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tindall. Any comment or question regarding ordinance 25? Seeing none, we're ready for item E, ordinance 26. Mr. Tindall.
Planning Commission case Z49, 2023, application of Faith Investments and Patricia Ann Jackson Smith. The agent is also Faith Investments. This is 6.07 acres. It's currently both R4 and AG ag, right there next to Glen Ellen Elementary. You can see the R4 in orange and the ag portion to the north makes up about 2/3 of this request. They're proposing to go to R5, and we haven't had R5 in a while. So R5 is multifamily horizontal development, so townhouses. Unlike R4, they can't go vertical. R5 does require 15% open space when they develop. It does require fee simple ownership at the end, and it typically has about the same density as R4 of about 12 units an acre. It's 2 parcels fronting North Whitfield Road, approximately 675 feet north of Whitfield Needmore Road intersection, City Council Ward number 9. It's a single-family residence on site and a level yard. The applicant's statement is to extend the proposed townhome development to include map 31 parcel 16, or the ag parcel there. I will say this thing does have some prior zoning history. When the gentleman rezoned owner Faith Investments of the R4 that was previously ag about 2 or 3 years ago. I will commend them in saying that they did keep their promise by saying we're not going to develop till Whitfield Road at least gets going and underway. And by the time this project potentially rezones, goes through the development phase and gets under construction, Whitfield Road, Needmore Road could be near wrapping up at that point.
From your lips to God's ears.
Yes, please. And we have proof of work going on out there. Glen Ellen would be on your right. This is Whitfield looking back toward Needmore Road. There's a home on one of the properties that's boarded up and would be demolished. As you can see, the properties are fairly level. This is Glen Ellen across the street. There's no gravity sewer in the area, but it can be extended at the applicant's expense. The street department has asked them to coordinate with the city widening project. And there are no other department concerns, and you can see the school system concerns about the capacities listed. Historical estimates would be 72 units on the just over 6 acres. Staff recommends approval. The proposed request is consistent with the land use plan. The R5 zoning district is consistent with the surrounding development pattern and is encouraged to have higher density development in close proximity to established schools. The adjacent City of Clarksville roundabout and roadway project is underway, and this project is anticipated to improve traffic flow in the area. And no adverse environmental issues were identified with this request. The Planning Commission also recommends approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tindall. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Mr. Tindall, you said fee-based,
Fee simple.
what is that?
Ownership as opposed to rental.
Oh, I never heard that term, okay. That's all.
Councilperson McLaughlin, you're recognized.
Mr. Tyndall, you had mentioned that the desire of the street department was that they would coordinate with the widening of Whitfield Road. Am I mistaken by saying that that part of Whitfield Road is not being widened all the way up to the end of the ag, the top?
I believe that's correct, and the mayor may correct me as well. Some of Whitfield Road is being widened and improved, but I don't believe it goes through this property. It does touch this property, but it may not go all the way through this or the Glen Ellen School.
What are the trip estimates from the maximum 72 units? Were the estimates for car trips to and from that development?
That's a great question. I'd have to defer to the street department. I'm not sure a traffic study was done for just 72 units. Typically, we do those studies when we're over 100 peak hour trips. So I would say it's under 100 peak hour trips, but how much under, I don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, we're now ready for item F, which is Resolution 6. Mr. Tyndall?
We have two abandonments today. Those are done via resolution. The first one here is a request of Elliot Kershaw. This is at the intersection of Woodard Street and an unimproved alleyway. There's no additional alleyway to the south. And again, a portion of that would be transferred to the property owner on the east and the property owner on the west. Planning Commission recommends approval. We had no department comments, and the staff also recommends approval.
Any questions about Resolution 6? Seeing none, we're ready for item G, Resolution 7.
This is another abandonment request at the request of the city of Clarksville. This is a portion of Wheeler Street, the city-owned portion. You can see the city owns several portions around Dixon Park there. And the intent of here is to turn this into city parkland, so the city would retain all but I think all of this would be retained by the city, even the top left corner there. And there you can see the portion that would open up that field right at the rear of the city garage and city street department. Staff and Planning Commission also recommend approval on this.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Any comment or question? Thank you, sir. Anything else?
I believe that completes my report.
All right, record time. Thank you, sir. We're now ready for the consent agenda. Madam Clerk? Now free to move about the country.
Consent agenda. All items in this portion of the agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the council and may be approved by one motion. However, a member of the council may request that an item be removed for separate consideration under the appropriate committee report. Ordinance 147, 2022, 23, second reading. An ordinance amending the city zoning ordinance of the city of Clarksville, Tennessee, as it pertains to the R3 and R2D zoning classification. Ordinance 1, 2022, 23, 24, second reading. An ordinance authorizing the city to purchase a portion of property owned by Hilldale Baptist Church located near Madison Street to the city of Clarksville, Tennessee, for the purpose of constructing, improving, operating, and maintaining a city fire station and for ingress and egress from same. Ordinance 2, 2023-24, second reading. An ordinance amending the operating budgets for fiscal year 2024 for governmental funds. Ordinance 140, 2022-23, to appropriate and provide budget authority for the COVID Special Revenue Fund. Ordinance 3, 2023-24, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Bill Ballou for zone change on property located on a parcel of land fronting on the west frontage of Allen Road, 925 plus or minus feet, north of the Tiny Town Road and Allen Road intersection from AG Agricultural District to R2A Single Family Residential District. Ordinance 4, 2023-24, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Eddie Burchett for zone change on a tract of land fronting on the south frontage of Rossview Road, south of the Rossview Road and Rollo Lane intersection from AG Agricultural District to R5 Residential District. Ordinance 5, 2023-24, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Reach Holdings LLC for zone change on property located on a portion of a tract of land fronting on the north frontage of Wilson Road, 760 plus or minus feet east of the Wilson Road and Chase Drive intersection from R5 Residential District to R4 Multiple Family Residential District, C2 General Commercial District. Ordinance 6, 2023-24, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Reach Holdings LLC for zone change on a portion of a tract of land fronting on the south frontage of Wilson Road, 290 plus or minus feet east of the Wilson Road and Chase Drive intersection from R5 Residential District to C2 General Commercial District. Resolution 05, 23-24, a resolution approving appointments to the Airport Liaison Board, Common Design Review Board, Designations Board, Economic and Community Development Board, Housing Authority Board, and Rail Service Authority. Adoption of minutes, August 3rd, 2023, and August 10th, 2023.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any question about the consent agenda? Seeing none, we're ready for the Finance Committee report. Chairperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Without objection, would it be possible for me to go ahead and read items A through G all at once?
Proceed. Proceed, please.
Okay. Ordinance 13, 2023, 24, first reading, accepting the donation of certain real property from BJ Properties to the city of Clarksville for the purpose of sewer pump station. Ordinance 14, 2023, 24, first reading, accepting the donation of certain real property from Bill Ballou to the city of Clarksville for the purpose of sewer pump station. Ordinance 15, 2023, 24, first reading, accepting the donation of certain real property from Copper Ridge Apartments LLC to the city of Clarksville for the purpose of sewer pump station. Ordinance 16, 2023, 24, first reading, accepting the donation of certain real property from Christopher Blackwell to the city of Clarksville for the purpose of sewer pump station. Ordinance 17, 2023, 24, first reading, accepting the donation of certain real property from James Durrett to the city of Clarksville for the purpose of sewer pump station. Ordinance 18, 2023, first reading, accepting the donation of certain real property from Edward Burchett to the city of Clarksville for the purpose of sewer pump station. Ordinance 19, 2023, 24, first reading, accepting the donation of certain real property from Jeff Burkhart Custom Properties to the city of Clarksville for the purpose of sewer pump station. The Finance and the Gas and Water Committees voted in favor of approval on all of those items A through G. And these are just the typical things that we've all voted on before, that once the sewer pump stations are built, then they are given back to the Gas and Water Department.
Questions? Proceed, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 20, 2023, 24, first reading, amending Part 1 Code of Ordinances, Title 13, Utilities and Service, Chapter 3, Gas, Water, and Sewer Service, the City of Clarksville, relative to deposits, charges, assessment areas, adjustments, and installment plans. The Finance Committee and the Gas and Water Committee voted in favor of approval. And Mayor, if possible, could we ask Mr. Riggins to please come up here and discuss this?
Yes, please, sir. Mr. Riggins?
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council.
Afternoon.
I'll try to be as thorough but as brief as possible going through these as requested by one of my colleagues in the back. If you will look at your packet, you'll see that the ordinance itself, the first 33 pages that you have in that packet, is the ordinance containing a quote-unquote clean version of the replacement. After that, it starts over on the page numbers, and I've got it in red and strike through for reference. If you don't mind looking at that and following through with me, I think would be the best way to go about it. And if I may, Mayor, I'd like to take this in bits. There's two major things at the very beginning that I'd like to discuss, and then open for questions, and then go on from there, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay, so starting, when you get to the proposed code revisions in red and strike through for reference, we'll really start on page 3. And you'll see the table there under the fees and deposits and things like that. You'll see strike through on the commercial, industrial, governmental entity, utility, or co-op gas, and that is in reference to deposits. The reason we're proposing this, you may remember around 2020, I believe it was, we did some code changes then, and we changed it to 2 times the highest bill on those first two for commercial and industrial. Sometime not long after that, we found out that doesn't quite work as far as new customers, existing commercial customers that have to put up a deposit for some reason later on. It's easy to go back and see that history. A new customer has no history, so there's no easy way to calculate 2 times the highest bill without possibly going back to our engineering group and, try to remember with these, most time we have these customers on the phone or in the office, and we're trying to help them and get them back to their business. So we made some moves there trying to figure out a good average by meter size. In doing that, we basically took the average reading for every meter in each meter size, dropped the lowest and the highest for anomalies, did an average, and then come up with that and tried that route. And then knowing that at some point, we would have to come back in front of the council. Knowing we had these others to do and coming back in front, we reassessed to see where we were at there. And what we found in that is in this time, we looked at the actual risk. So what we did is the last 2.5 years that we've been collecting deposits for commercial, we looked at basically our collections in that. And then we also went back and looked at the previous 2.5 years before that when we were not collecting deposits to see what the difference is. In doing that math, we found that our risk per year is around $2,000 or a little more total for everything per year. And I can tell you in the last calendar year, we signed up well over 300 commercial accounts just in 1 year. So with that, and I can tell you, with some of these commercial accounts, the way we had the averages for a 2-inch meter, $2,100 was the water deposit. That was the average. So you can see there, and as you've heard me say before, my job is to only collect what I can justify, what I'm using. One thing I'd like you to keep in mind is deposits. We cannot use that for anything except to hold in an account in case we have to come back to it. Residential deposits right now, they're currently held for 4 years, and then they're refunded if there's no use of those before that time. They're refunded, credited back to that account. Commercial deposits are held for the lifetime of the account. And again, it's money that I can't use, it's money that they can't use. And for us, we didn't think it was fair. For one, if I'm audited by the comptroller's office, the Water and Wastewater Finance Board, I cannot justify taking in all that money and holding it in an account when my actual risk is $2,000. So that's the reason that we propose doing away with that. And I'd like to start with that one.
Okay. Any questions about what we've covered so far? Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized about what we've covered so far.
Right, I was just wondering, do you hold them in interest-bearing accounts? Is the deposits held in an interest-bearing account?
I'm not certain. That is one thing that we're checking on now, because I do realize if we hold in interest-bearing accounts, we must pay interest.
And we have not been doing that, right?
No.
So I would be interested in that.
I will find out and let you know. You're welcome.
Councilperson Allen, you're recognized.
So with the marking out completely, is that meaning you're not having a deposit at all?
For commercial and industrial accounts, like I said, that $2,000 of risk was only relative to commercial, industrial, and government entities. For residential, which we looked at also, in actuality, those deposits have not changed in some time. In the last same 2.5 years, we've actually lost $95,427 while collecting those deposits. We've written that much off, even collecting those deposits. That's why we're not proposing to increase those. By the math, it shows that we should, because that's $38,000 a year that we're losing by not collecting more, but we're not proposing that. We're proposing to hold residential deposits static, because those are over here. The commercial deposits and industrial is what we're finding, there is no risk. There's no reason to collect that money. The residential, I cannot make that same statement. Again, at this point, I'm losing close to $100,000 in 2.5 years while collecting those deposits.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilperson Shekinah, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Regan. I'm just thinking about a case that happened in my ward recently. So when a business becomes delinquent, when they don't pay their bill, right, and then they have to go back and get it turned on and things like that, and then they pay that fee, do they have to pay a deposit then or no?
Currently, under the way it's written right now, yes, and I believe, is it the one
Yes.
that we spoke about?
Yes.
So in that case there alone, just for instance, this commercial building, I can't remember its exact use, had a 2-inch meter. Their average water bill ranged between $40 and $50 because of the math that we did in the deposits we had set up for ease. They were charged $2,100 for water only for a deposit. I can't justify. I have no other way to really work that in fairly without doing it by meter size, and the only thing I have to go off of is use. But in that case specifically, I cannot justify. That one customer alone was paying right about what my what my, risk was for the entire year.
Right.
And again, that's one of 300 and something accounts.
So under the new rule, under the new proposal, they only just pay the fee. They don't pay
Correct.
the deposit.
And that's one thing that we find. Commercial, we don't find that they don't pay and then they run out on us.
Right.
They come back and pay late fees, connection fees, things like that. They run back and pay to be reestablished,
Right.
get back in business and go on.
Thank you.
Councilperson Holloman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. The security deposit, so we cannot spend that money, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's all I've got, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment about this section? Proceed, Mr. Riggins.
Okay. The last, section in that table there, you'll see a new fee that we're proposing to charge. Credit/debit card transaction fee being 2.95% of the payment amount, with a $1.95 minimum fee. This is simply a convenience fee. It's something that we have never charged before. The reason that we're proposing charging it now is the fees are going up. We find that more people are paying with credit cards. There was a time when we thought it was okay for us to absorb or eat those fees because it allows people to pay online and it keeps them out of the office, which it keeps my number of staff down. This year, what we've estimated is approximately $880,000 in fees estimated this year alone for credit card and debit card fees, which is up from last year being $700,000 that we did absorb, that we're going to have to absorb if we don't charge this. I would like to note that the other options to pay with no fee in office is cash, check, money order, or bank draft using checking or savings account. And then where we find most of our credit card, or a lot of our credit card use is online. Another way that you can pay online without fees is in checking or savings account ACH. So the same steps they have to do to get there, instead of plugging in a credit card account, they could use their routing number, their banking numbers, and do the same effect, pay the same way.
Okay, we got questions. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Riggins. I appreciate you talking to us about this, especially the large amount of money that's associated that, that the Gas and Water Department is having to, absorb. This, to me, this 2.95% makes perfect sense. I know many years ago, businesses would have a sign out that a small business would have a sign out telling you if you used a card, you had to pay a percentage. There was a minimum purchase fee, or you were going to be charged a minimum fee, just as we have here. More, as you say, more and more people are using cards, and most businesses have that calculated into their business plan and recognize that as a cost of goods and services. That's not something that you're able to do with the Gas and Water Department. I mean, even though we've just been eating those fees. So I'm very supportive of this measure. I think there's a lot of different places too. I know different times when I've had to pay bills online, it flat out tells me on there that if I'm using a credit card, I have to pay a fee. A lot of our nonprofits, if they're having something, there's something where it's going to charge you a fee if you use a credit card. I know I get mine just automatically drafted, so that's not going to, nobody's going to have a fee for having that. I know a lot of people, they'll go down and write their check and pay, so I'm glad they're not going to be, continuing to subsidize the fee for the others that, are using cards. And I mean, I don't even know where my checks are, so I understand that more and more people are using credit cards. But I thank you for looking into this, and I think the 2.95% is very normal. Often it's going to be 3% or somewhere around there, because I know various different companies, based on what card they use, charge different amounts, different percentage amounts.
And I would like to add on that comment there, how we came to this amount. We went to our vendor, Invoice Cloud, who does it, and asked them, for one, there are laws that cover what you can charge, being a flat out fee or a percentage. We went to them. This is not what we do, figure things like this. So we went to them to ask, what should we do to meet our financial needs, but also be within the law? This is what they proposed. And one more thing that I failed to mention in the beginning, if you look at the ordinance, the effective date of this, all these proposed revisions, and it revolves around these first two, is November 1st, if approved by this body, and that is as requested by one of our committee members.
Thank you,
Well,
Go
I
ahead,
will
I'm
add to that, as a former banker and a business banker, I often looked at credit card statements as far as for the merchant services side of it, and I can easily see how those fees add up. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilperson Allen, you're recognized.
So, Mr. Riggins, while I do understand the fees, I'd really like to see the estimate of the 800,000 and where that number's coming, from. If you could send us something with, kind of a little bit of a breakdown. The 2.95%, while I understand that, what I don't understand is the flat rate, $1.95. If my bill is $30, I gotta pay 3%. That's not going to amount to $1.95. And when you're dealing with people that's barely pinching pennies, $1.95 when it could have been $2.95%. I think we need to choose. We need to choose either 2.9% of the bill or $1.95 flat rate. While some of our water bills are $20, $30, and some people can't afford that. To say that the minimum fee is $1.95, that's pretty tough to me. For anybody's bill, the minimum fee.
I believe the reason that that's in there, this is, so let me be clear, this is a pass-through. So I believe the reason this is in there, our vendor said that the minimum that we pay on these, I would assume, is that $1.95. I want to be clear, gas and water this is not a way to raise funds.
I understand
This
that.
is just to pay, but I will clarify, and I can tell you the number, how we came about on that is we used, the amount of fees that is right now, or the dollar amount that we're proposed to pay now versus how many credit card uses that we paid a fee on the last year. We know we paid $700,000 with the current fee, with the new fee and the estimated new customers based on year to year. That's how we come up with $880,000.
So I'd just like to kind of see that so I
Okay.
can justify
Sure.
voting for this or not voting for this. And if you could get with the credit card company to see if that's the minimum you pay is $1.95 per transaction, that would be greatly appreciated too.
Well, I'll collect that information and give it to the clerk, and she will pass it out to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yes, first I'd like to say thank you for always taking my phone calls.
Yes, ma'am.
Even though they might be challenging at times, but I'm grateful for the conversation. So I would like to, we talked about how this is really prohibitive for many of the people who in the wintertime are probably floating their gas and water bill from credit card to credit card, because you saw on the chart that they're already overburdened with rent. And now on top of this, we're going to add this additional fee. And I would also remind people that you add the 2.95% fee, which then goes on to the total amount of my charge that I now pay 20 to 30% interest on. So it's like the chaos of poverty just keeps circling and circling when they're probably using the credit cards in many instances to float the bills until spring, or someone was sick until I can get back to work. I mean, I'm just looking at the community, and honestly, if you were here for what Mr. Dellinger put up, I mean, his numbers illustrate exactly that. So we discussed that, and I discussed my concerns. But I also understand that the state legislature decreased the equalization rate, or your payment in lieu of taxes, your pilot. So this year, you actually have an additional $1.3 million in the coffers that was not expected, as well as the previous year we raised rates, and then your wonderful grant writer found quite a bit of money for grants. So it's not because we're hurting for money. I understand if we put our business hat on, this is the best thing we can do, but we also serve a community, and we put our business hat on and took care of the businesses. So now I'm asking that we maybe put on our humanity hat and use some of the money and take care of the community, and maybe let this pass one more year while we figure out some of our housing shortages.
If I may.
Sure.
And I understand completely. And I will say, taking those kind of considerations in, that is one reason why we do adjustments on things like that for leaks that do not go down the drain for sewer adjustments. When the customer can prove it didn't go down, things like that. Payment plans to stretch that out, that's in the code that you've allowed us to institute to do that. We do that in every way we can, but when it comes to a service and the hat I have to wear to comply with the comptroller's office and the state, the Water and Wastewater Finance Board, for me, and y'all know I say this over again, I have to watch how we subsidize any amount. I believe there are places in government where you can do that. When it comes to a utility providing a service where you pay per unit, I think you could possibly get into some trouble. And as far as the extra money, I also know that cities are petitioning to have that changed back. Let me say, gas and water had nothing to do with lobbying to get that done. As you've seen in our budget, $1 million is, while I appreciate our staff who do the grants, remember that project when it started out was the amount of that grant, and now it's much more, over doubled in price. Also, when we raised the rates, we thought the water plant was going to be about $180 million, which is now $210 million. So I promise this isn't a money grab. And not for that, because this amount of money is not going to make up that difference either. For me, I also have to take into consideration those customers who are paying by check on a fixed income as well, paying by check or cash every single month, and they're having to subsidize those who use credit cards. And as I've said, what we did in the rates with commercial and residential rates and industrial, we're trying to stop that subsidization at any level. But I do appreciate what you're saying. I do.
I wouldn't say that we're subsidizing because we're not changing rates. We're just not choosing to charge something that we haven't ever done before. I mean, this is a change. It is an increase. However we say it, it is an increase for many of the people. So for what it's worth, I plan to bring an amendment to remove this. It is done in the best interest of our vulnerable community. Vote for it. I mean, I don't think we sit here and pray every time in this meeting, and this is a time where we can really think about what are we as a community doing for all of our residents, and not just the people who own a pool or who get new grass and don't have to pay extra money to water their grass, fill their pool. Let's not charge our people for a rate that we haven't done before. In the middle, even if we just put it off a year or two while we figure out housing.
And I'd like to be clear on the statements as far as the adjustments on pools and things like that. Remember, all of those adjustments in that whole section have everything to do with water not going into the sewer system. Right. The pool is just one piece. It's also with leaks and other things that we're not just servicing people who have pools or businesses and things like that. We're trying to serve all our customers. The pools were one way where it's a large grab. You're talking about a lot of money there. But more so than the pools is also the every single day customers that call in with water leaks that don't go down the drain. And those same adjustments in that category do the same thing. I just want to point that out.
Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I had something else, but first, Mr. Riggins, I want to ask, how is the sewer bill is calculated? What is it based off of, the sewer portion of our bill?
The water usage, meters read.
It's based off the water usage with the expectation that water is then going through our sewer system and being treated.
Correct, yes, ma'am.
So in the event of a leak, the pool being filled, things of that such, or things of those types of things, the reason that's being adjusted one time in a 12-month period is because of the fact is, as you said, that water's not going through the sewer system.
Correct. And the reason we do it one time is if we do it every time, then there is no reason for a customer to actually fix their plumbing, to fix their issue on their side, which would entail other subsidies beyond that, if that makes sense. We're fine with it one time, but now that you know it, you need to fix it.
But
yes,
we're not forgiving any of their, we're not adjusting the cost of the use of the water. It's simply on the sewer side of the bill.
Correct. There is no adjustment on if water goes through the meter, I must charge for it. The only time it's adjusted is if we find there was error on our part.
Okay, thank you. And then,
You're
what I was going to be in reference to an earlier question regarding the minimum fee that's charged. The credit card companies, they charge a transaction fee plus a percentage. So that's where he's referring to on that minimum fee. Every single one of them charge that minimum fee. So that's where that's going to continue to add up. So that's why they have that in there, because even if it's a $2-3 charge, they're still getting charged that transaction fee regardless of the amount.
Councilperson Holloman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. So you said we're losing about 800,000 per year approximate, right?
It's based off the new email I got this week, $880,000.
Okay.
is this.
So we're losing $800,000. I am in support of this fee. And the reason for that is because we have to run a lean machine. With this loss, eventually it adds up, it snowballs, and it will affect our customers one way or another. Like the customers will have to pay for this because we at Gas and Water, Mr. Riggins at Gas and Water, we don't exist just to rake in money. We exist to provide a service for our community. And I think we should all keep that in mind, but thank you.
Councilperson Zacharias, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Previous speaker said a lot of what I wanted to say. Mr. Riggins, you were one of the first meetings that I had when I was appointed to City Council a couple of years ago. And I remember leaving that meeting just being really impressed with the efforts that you and your department went to not collect any more money than you absolutely need to provide service. It was right on the tail end of COVID. People were still suffering from unemployment and underemployment as a result of the pandemic, and the efforts that Gas and Water took to help them out were commendable. Like the previous speaker said, I am in favor of this as it is written, because it is it's avoidable for the vast majority of people. Pay with ACH, pay with a personal check, pay in person. At some point, if we let this continue to snowball, to use another phrase from the previous speaker, ultimately, it is going to reach a point where, a general rate increase might have to be considered. And I see this as a way to make sure that the cost of using that service is incurred by the people who use the service being to be able to pay with a credit or debit card. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Councilperson Red, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. And I probably should know this, and this is one of those times I wish I did the accounting and the purchasing at home. But the credit cards, does that also apply to like your bank card that you use or PayPal? Do they charge a 3%
Yes,
fee
sir.
as well if you use a bank card?
Yes, it's for credit card, credit cards and debit cards.
Debit cards just, okay.
Yes, sir.
Well, let me ask you, if you take personal checks then,
Yes.
how much do you lose on bad checks? Whenever you get a bad check, you got to run after a bad check. And I know, I guess you charge them perhaps a fee of $50, but you just got a bad check. So that bad check is the whole amount
Correct.
of that water bill, and now it's bad. And some of those you can't go get.
Well,
So
and that
you didn't just lose the 3%, you just lost the whole thing. Am I
Sure.
right?
Yes, on those, we do charge a $25 return check fee, but we also shut the water off. So if you want your water turned back on, you're gonna pay me that amount plus the 25, plus deposits, plus just as the code says here. But that's also part of the previous change, some are written off.
Mm-hmm.
And again, remember, that's the part I'm talking about, that currently today, I'm losing $38,000 a year on with deposits.
Right, because on a transit type place, you have people that's military, gonna be moving a lot, and perhaps on that last payment, if that check's bad, it's for the whole amount of the, and how much is that?
And that's that's not just checks, that's on any payments other than cash. Assuming that the money I get's real.
Well,
But that's also account, if you have ACH or anything else and the amount in your account is insufficient,
Yes,
still applies.
okay. The reason I ask is because with my business, I'd rather have a credit card and lose 2 or 3% than take a bad check. I mean, and it's not the amount of the bad check, it's just having to go through the hassle
Right.
of the time spent and that sort of thing, especially if it's the last payment whenever they're moving or whatnot.
And our vendor has told us in their experience, they don't see this changing anything. As far as customer usage,
Yeah,
the great majority of those using credit cards today will continue to use credit cards after November 1st with the fee.
have you looked at perhaps just building the price in somewhere where you would not charge a fee and just, I mean,
Technically, that's the way it is now.
That's it.
Everybody's paying the credit card fees now.
because it looks like, in a way, you're kind of encouraging people to write a check rather than the credit card, if they gotta pay the fee. And with the credit
Correct.
card, you got your money. With a check, you really just have, I promise that this is good. That's just the way I look at it with my business, but I'm sure y'all calculated that all out.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Councilperson Allen, you're recognized.
Okay, Mr. Riggins, so while I get the whole fee for the minimum fee and I get the percentage, it's a minimum of $1.95. When I had my dance studio, it was like a $10 flat rate fee for each transaction, and then it was like 2.75%. That's the question that I'm asking. What are we actually paying per transaction? And that's all I want to know as it pertains to that. If you could get that information back to us, because to me, we should charge exactly what they're charging us.
Okay.
So if we're paying 10 cents per transaction and $2.75%, which may not be it may be way more.
Right.
Then that's what we should charge the customer. If it's a $30 bill, that's going to be a 10-cent transaction, and then it's going to be 2.75%. That ends up being way less than that $1.95. So that's why I'm asking you if you could get those numbers for us so we can charge exactly what they're charging.
And I've got the notes here. I will get you how the vendor came to the 2.95%, the $1.95 minimum, just what you asked for, plus the 880,000, how we got to that. And yes, I'll say if it pleases the council to get this, if there needs to be, as long as it captures the amount of money, I'm fine with it. That's all I'm trying to do is capture the money. If they show there's another way on the actual, just as you described, I'm fine with amending that to that and moving forward.
And I want to be very clear. I do believe in paying for convenience. I'm going to pay my fee. It's not going to change after November 1st. However, we're saying November 1st. This has to go through 2 readings.
Yes.
So that puts us at November 1st anyway. So our first reading's September, our second reading's October. So it'll go into effect the very next month after that?
No, well, now the way it's written, without it written that way, it goes into effect, anything other than rate changes, as far as what we do in the code, they go into effect the day after you pass this,
Okay.
technically.
Okay.
Right. A rate change, by, I believe it's state statute,
Okay.
it has to be 30 days after second reading.
So this would go into effect the day after our November meeting. I mean, our October meeting, but now it's going into effect November 1st.
And the purpose for that is to give customers 2 months of notification. This, if this passes now, we're gonna go ahead and notify the customers, this may be coming, if this passes, just to give them 2 months of notice to know this is what we're doing.
Okay.
So if it is gonna affect you and you've got another way, we have all these other ways to pay, we're gonna let them know that as well, just like I've described here.
Okay.
That way, they see their options, and they possibly have other ways. If they can work those out personally, they can pay the other ways and avoid this fee.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilperson Lovato?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to ask a clarifying question, piggyback off of a previous suggestion. It's against the law to hide these fees in the bill, right?
Yes.
So we can't build these fees in where we're not notifying the customer that they are actually being charged these fees.
From what I gather, there are companies who do add that in. I'm sure it's like retail, things like that, possibly, who do. They just charge you more for a piece of clothing, things like that. From what we understand with what we do, that's not the case. We don't want to hide the fees. We want to be upfront and let everybody know just like the other businesses that have those signs. There's a reason they have those signs there. But yes, I believe it's our responsibility, even if it's not legally, morally, but it possibly could be legally for utilities as well. Yes, ma'am.
I believe it is, and I'd like to double check on that. The other thing that I would like to double check, there is a formula that your vendor is using per the law that they cannot charge. We cannot charge more than a certain percentage. So we're bound by regulations on what, per the law, like we can't charge more than what the law allows us for this. Do you know what that formula is?
I do not. I will get that as part of this proof that was asked for. And again, that's the reason we didn't come up with it, because I didn't want to risk that. We let our vendor tell us, but you're absolutely correct in what you said.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Mr. Riggins? Anything else, sir?
Yes.
All right, keep going.
I'll try to make all the rest of it more brief than these other.
27 more parts. All right.
So I'll run through the rest of these, and please stop me if you have a question. Number 3, you can see there it was just a typo previously made. Number 4 there, we're striking some language. Oh, this is still on page 3. Number 4, we're striking some language. What that has to do is if a customer has multiple accounts and they inadvertently pay double up on one account and pay nothing on one, it allows us to move that money with that and remove the fees that it caused. Right now it says that we only do that further provided that the said customers remain in good standing, no late fees assessed immediately the previous 12 months. In these cases, we really don't care if they've had a late fee. It's the right, on any account, it's the right thing to do. They paid us the amount of money. It's just moving from one account to the other. So it's just removing that restriction, which is actually better for the customer. That's what we're doing there. And then next, on page 5, that is in 2B, that is simply removing the commercial and industrial deposits there, redlining all that and adding no deposit to be charged. Again, we've already covered that. Okay. On page 12 through 13 is the next revision there. You'll see it's in reference to Hazelwood Drainage Basin. If you'll look at page 13 at the last sentence, it says at such time as the total cost of said improvement has been fully and wholly recovered, the aforementioned unit sewer capacity fee shall become $0. If you'll remember, that was done some months back. It no longer exists, so we're just striking that whole section to do away with that, pull that out of the code, just as it's designed to do, and just putting reserved in its place. And then on page 16, you'll see under residential service, previously, at some point back in time, depending on how apartments were metered, if there was one meter for multiple apartments over a couple, something like, there was a certain number above that they were considered commercial. We changed that years ago. Residential is residential, whether if it's an apartment, single family, multifamily, whatever it may be, it's considered residential. This is simply cleaning that code up, basically. And then on page 23, if you'll remember, we changed our policy some time back and let the customers know, and it's in full effect now and has been for a few months now. When we changed the billing dates, previously it said if the balance is not paid in full by the 10th day following the due date of the bill, because of that billing date change, it needs to be just strike that to be final payment date. Again, just clarifying that, coinciding with the policy that we already have in effect. And at the end of page 23, beginning of page 24, it's just adding some verbiage for clarification, just basically stating all fees. It's what we're doing now, collecting in those situations any fees and deposits that apply. It's just clarifying that for customers so they can fully understand what we're doing. And then further down on page 24 in B, on that one-time high water bill installment plan, at some point back, I believe it was probably 2020, if I had to guess, it was changed to 3 inadvertently. I'm not sure how that happened. It was a mistake. it's always been 5 times the usage for that to be applied. And it's in our policy, and it's what we've done even before that was changed. Then on page 25, again, this is just clarifying this is one of the adjustments that we spoke about, the one-time lawn watering. That's for new homes as well as existing homes reestablishing the yard. Before this change in 2020, the one-time yard watering, the contractor who built the house and installed the sod or planted the grass, they always used that adjustment. We thought it was fair to extend that one more time, that now the contractor gets one and the customer gets one, which is what we want. That changed in 2020. This is also just clarifying about the reestablishing of the lawn. That was the intent. It really didn't spell that out, but now it does. And in instance of reestablishing a lawn, they get the same thing, but they have to bring in a proof of purchase or seed or sod. And with that, I believe that is all the proposed amendment, revisions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Riggins. Any more questions? All right.
Thank you.
Chairperson Streetman.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 21, 2023, 24, first reading. An ordinance accepting the donation of certain real property from Edward C. Burchett to the city of Clarksville for the public use of CSM Retired Sidney R. Brown Park at Birchwood. The Finance Committee voted in favor of approval.
Thank you. Any comment or question? Seeing none, proceed, please.
Resolution 1, 2023, 24, a resolution authorizing a request from Neighborhood and Community Services to amend its fiscal year 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2022, 2023 Community Development Block Grant CDBG Annual Action Plans /2015 through 2020 and 2020 through 2024 consolidated plans by undertaking the following activities. The Finance and Neighborhood and Community Services Committees both voted in favor of approval.
Thank you. Any comment or question regarding this resolution? Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Right. Mayor, I read, but I don't, why are we going so far back? What is, I mean, I couldn't figure out what's going on with this.
Just leftover monies in previous program years that we're trying to spend and clean up.
And we're not gonna put it back out to the community, we're just gonna, like, they were very competitive when we granted them, and now there's extra money, why would we not take it and put it back out to the community to compete for it?
But my pay grade, Mr. Smith, and invite you to come forward and kind of walk us through the process. If you will, ask your question again.
So I was, these grants, I've sat through a couple of the processes, and they're very competitive, and we're going pretty far back, and some people that didn't qualify maybe would have liked to compete a second time for the money that didn't get used. I'm just, why did we choose not to put it back out for, like an application process instead of just putting it in the pots that we'd already approved?
In the HUD process that we're following to this, there is and has been the 30-day public comment period where if any of those interested parties came forward, we could have entertained an application process. The only comments we got from the community were positive towards the changes that were proposed.
Okay.
So it was published in the newspaper and so on prior to meeting with Neighborhood and Community Services for that committee approval.
Councilperson Allen, you're recognized.
I just want y'all to know I can't vote on this, so I'll be abstaining.
Okay. All right. Any other question? Chairperson Streetman. I'm sorry.
Resolution 2, 2023, 24, a resolution declaring the intent of the city of Clarksville to reimburse itself in a not-to-exceed amount of $78,269,048 for certain project expenditures with the proceeds of general obligation bonds, notes, or other debt obligations to be issued by the city. The Finance Committee voted in favor of approval.
Any comment or question? Seeing none, proceed, please. Oh, Councilperson Allen, you're recognized.
In the packet, and I don't know if we were supposed to see exactly where this money is going to, but there's nothing in there that shows exactly where the money's going. in the packet that we have?
Could we ask Ms. Matta, our CFO, to come and walk us through this?
I didn't include it, but it is the capital projects that were included in the budget, and I can email them to you. But know that just because that's what this reimbursement is for, when we issue debt, it could be for a combination of multiple things, and that has to come to you. Because I can guarantee you, we will not do all of these projects at exactly this time in one debt issuance.
So what this is for us to release the money and then,
No, what
and then
this-
we're gonna go back and look at it again?
No, what this is doing is, some of these projects that you approved in the budget, we could start them soon, right? So, it could be Spring Creek Parkway. We could be spending more of that during this year, but I'm not gonna issue the debt yet because I don't need it. So if I spend money that you all approved, I wanna be able to reimburse myself at a future date when I do issue the debt. I don't issue the debt until I know we need the cash flow. Because I don't want to pay interest on it until I absolutely have to. So I make sure we have enough, like typically we have about $10 million that will get reimbursed when I issue debt, so that we've already spent a chunk of it and then we reimburse. So that's all this is doing, is saying if we spend money before we go to market to borrow the money, this will allow me to reimburse the city for what we've already spent. Okay, so then maybe next year, if we issue some debt, at that point, I have to come to you and say, I want to issue $50 million worth of debt, and it's going to pay for, and I'll show you what our plan is for how we plan on spending that money, and then we'll borrow it. This is just to reimburse ourselves.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Chairperson Streetman.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution 3/2023-24, a resolution authorizing an interlocal agreement between the City of Clarksville and Montgomery County pertaining to the division of 2023 Burn Justice Assistant Grant Fund allocations and the administration and use of such funds. The Finance Committee voted in favor of this, and voted in favor of approval.
Any comment or question? Seeing none, Chairperson Streetman.
Concludes my report, Mayor.
Thank you. Gas and Water Committee, Chairperson Holman.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll have a full report next week.
Thank you. Neighborhood and Community Services, Chairperson Shakina.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a full report next week.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation Committee, Chairperson Zacharias.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll have a full report next week.
Thank you. Public Safety Committee, Chairperson Red.
I'll have a complete and thorough report next Thursday.
All right, we'll look forward to that. Council, Transportation, Streets and Garage Committee, Chairperson Smith, you're recognized.
I have a report on September the 7th.
All right, dare to be different. All right, item 10, new business, resolution 4/2023-24, a resolution adopting the City of Clarksville's legislative agenda for consideration by the 114th Tennessee General Assembly. Chairperson Streetman, you're recognized on that resolution.
Thank you, Mayor. If you'll, as always, if you'll click on the link, you'll be able to see the legislative agenda that was worked on and voted on and approved by the Legislative Agenda Committee. Very appreciative of all the members for their time that they spent. We actually met every week on a Wednesday for 6 or 7 weeks or more in a row. Quite a bit of time spent going through different items and looking to see what we wanted to ask for from our state representatives. These are items that will be of a direct benefit to our city, our community here. We talked over all of them, some of them quite a bit in detail. And what I would ask is that we have the full support from this council to be able to carry this forward to our state representatives and ask them for the assistance that we have on there. As you see, we've got, of course, number one, as always, is going to be our road projects, because infrastructure is key and needed here with the growth that we've been seeing. We've got private utilities on there. I don't want to read out all of these, but I will reference this as to request a time limit be imposed on private utility companies to address the need for them to respond to local government projects projects where utilities need to be moved, utilities would have no more than 30 days from issuing of the notice to proceed to begin to move their equipment. As we know, that's been very costly, both to us as a city. It's been costly for our state as well, because with the inflation that we've seen over the years, every day is the construction costs more and more. So when they've held up projects for a year, 2 years, that's greatly increased the cost. And if they're not going to move it, then it'd be nice if they wanted to help pay for the damages that it cost us. Also included on here is Fire Station Safety Improvement Grant Program. This would be requesting that the state create a grant in order to help the fire departments in, obviously in our city to be able to apply for it, but throughout the state, it would be a grant what we could ask them to create so that they could request funding to help bring our current fire stations up to the National Firefighter Protection Association standards. Fire safety standards. I think I got that really close. I'm sorry, Chief Montgomery. But there isn't a dollar amount associated with this because of the fact that we don't know what it would cost for everyone everywhere else. We just want the opportunity for them to create it so that we could apply for it. This would be not only for renovating current, but if needed, also building a new one, because in some instances, the old fire stations are going to be too small to be able to utilize the larger fire trucks that we need these days to be able to pull in. Plus, you need more, you need male and female bathrooms, especially for the ability to have hot, warm, and cold zones in order, or cool zones in order to be able to protect our firefighters from all the carcinogens that they take in on their gear when they come in. So there's lots of different things that factor into this one. We also would like to request the state legislators to create an Emancipation Day holiday. August 8th has been a significant date to commemorate the Emancipation Proclamation signed into law by President Lincoln. It's also acknowledging that Tennessee Governor Phil Bredesen signed legislation acknowledging August 8th as Emancipation Day. So this was on our agenda last year and is on there again this year, requesting to make it a holiday. Equalization rate application to pilots. This is requesting that municipal utilities pilot payments be exempt from the application of the equalization ratio. As was discussed earlier, our municipalities are able to pay, our enterprise funds, those companies are able to pay much lower tax than what they would pay if they were exempt from this. And this has a lot to do with the assets they have on the books, the depreciation that's involved there, but it continues to go down every year what they pay. This would allow it to where theirs is equal and fair across the board as far as for paying that. We have legalized medical cannabis. We had a request come in from one of our veterans, and he was part of a veterans group. He asked, as he did last year, for this to be included on there. Obviously, we have a very huge population here of former military members. So this was the request to help for legalizing medical cannabis. Also, it's on here to restore return shared sales tax. This is sales tax, requesting the support of the restoration of the historic revenue sharing relationship, which is pre-2002 of state shared sales tax, in order for the cities to once again receive an allocation of the full 7% that is collected. This is something that for our benefit would be in excess of $3 million to be able to bring that back to us instead of it being continued to be kept at the state. So I would ask that everyone supports our agenda, and again, say thank you to all the committee members for all the time that was spent discussing this and for bringing the items forward for us to discuss.
Thank you. Councilperson Redd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank the committee too, as well. I attended one of their meetings, and I have an amendment that is one to add, and it's a major amendment. It's not like crossing a T or dotting an I. So I know if there is an objection to the consideration, I'll understand. And if no disrespect to the committee meeting members, I just had thought of it in between, too late to bring it to the committee is what it is. So I'm just showing it to you now. If there's an objection to the consideration, I'll understand. I'll give it to council, and at some point in the future, I'll just put it on as a regular resolution, if you like. So that's all I gotta say. And if you don't have it, just let me know. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilperson Allen, you're recognized.
We don't have to do a consideration. We can amend. We can try to amend this, right? On the,
Yeah, it's a resolution we can amend. He can offer that as an amendment next week.
okay. I would like to thank the legislative committee for putting this together. I think it's beautiful, beautiful request, especially the legalizing of the medical marijuana and the road projects. I would like to request if nobody else will do it, if this is the way it's going to be submitted, it kind of reads requesting. If I go back and fix that, would that have to be an amendment? Because it doesn't read uniform, if you get what I'm saying. So like one of them, it says requesting Emancipation Day to be a holiday. It says requesting in the title, but then it doesn't say that in any of the other titles. It says requesting in the body. I'm just saying if we could make the language uniform.
We can do
If
that.
anybody minds that.
We can do that.
Okay, and the next thing that I thought was going to be on there when it came to the traffic piece, the infrastructure piece, is the lights that are planned on Tiny Town Road. They're planned, and they've been saying they're coming, but maybe adding in and expediting those lights to the agenda, and I will probably make an amendment to that. If anybody has any questions about that, open.
We did. There's no question, but TDOT has notified us that the light at Tiny Town and 12 Oaks has been approved and funded. We're just waiting for TDOT to get around to contracting that out. Plus, I think you've all gotten the email. We've called for a workshop on the transportation plan. We're going to update you on every single project that's going on, and then ask for input from the council regarding other projects you'd like to see considered. We'll take those back, prioritize them, determine what funding mechanism would fit best, and then we'll report that back.
Okay, thank
Okay?
you.
Thank you. Councilperson Streetman.
Thank you, Mayor. I will say this list with the 4 items on here, this was Mr. Stan Williams' list. And the idea being to put as much strength behind these 4 right here. And at our committee meeting, the mayor actually did address that we would be having the upcoming. So that's why it is just those 4 on there. And to really, especially just as the Trenton Road up there, because that's much needed. So that's exactly why it was, because we had other ideas as well. And so appreciative of the opportunity to kind of get 2 bites at this apple, so.
Okay, any other questions regarding this resolution? Seeing none, we're now ready for discussion item B, amending the official code of the city of Clarksville pertaining to the filling of vacancies on the city council other than the mayor. Councilperson Allen, you are the sponsor of that discussion item. You're recognized.
Okay, so if you will click on the link, and basically the reason why I went and looked at this is because this council has had, I won't even say opportunity, but has had the task of appointing city council people 4 times since I've been on the council. So we have the most experience with this process. I promise you we do. And there have been things that every time we did it, that were kind of like, okay, well, what's going on with this piece of the process? So the last time we did an appointment, we had an issue to where 2 people had not had their voters registration, and it was not a year yet. So I worked with Ms. Canfield and Mr. Baker to kind of come up with a way to where all that information is given at one time. Ms. Canfield gets the information from Ms. Black, and the appointees are able to send in their information, and then right before we have our session to where we vote, attached to the agenda will be all that information. No one is making a decision on whether or not someone can be an appointee. We just have all the information right there in front of us, just in case that incident ever happens again. So that's what Ms. Canfield said, that she feels like the process is much smoother. that it gives steps on the way that it would go. And Mr. Baker looked through it and made sure it was all legal, so that it's not changing any of our core laws that have to do with this process. So I wanted to bring it for discussion, just in case there was anything else that we've seen throughout the process. I know there's two more things that me and Mr. Baker discussed that I'll talk about after we address this piece. But if there's anything else for this piece that you guys might want to bring to the table before I send it to the Finance Committee next month.
Councilperson McLaughlin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one question for the sponsor. I appreciate the detail in here, and it does make a lot more sense. But the section where it says that if the election commissioner cannot do the research that the city clerk will, do city clerks have access to local and state election coordinator websites, or is that something we would need to subscribe to?
No, we do have access. The public has access in general to find who is registered to vote in their city. Now, Ms. Black can do it more expeditedly. She does that on her own. We can't put a law in place for the next election commissioner. They might decide they're not doing it. So that's why we put that in there, because we can't legislate for the county.
Sure.
And that's why Mr. Baker said that we should put that piece in there.
I just want to make sure our staff had access to
Yes.
those records. Thank you.
Councilperson Streetman, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not actually sure that and I will say it's the administrator of elections. That's what Ms. Black's title is.
Okay, Mr. Baker, we might need to change that. We put that.
But she can't actually say no. That is what her responsibility is to verify that information. So whether it's this one, whether it was the next one, they can't just tell us, no, I'm not going to, do my job. That's no different than when any of us choose to run for office. We all have to go through the Montgomery County Election Commission. So it works that same way through that. I do have concerns where I feel like I guess I'm just not seeing where it's really necessary for us to go through all this. The process, has worked. I realized there was a couple last time that they had the ability to still be able to bring forward the information to be able to support whether or not they were eligible to run. But for one, we've got within 48 hours of the conclusion of the regular session of the city council, the city clerk shall forward a list of the names of the applicant, stated address, who appeared before it. Our regularly scheduled meetings are on Thursdays, so I'm not really sure where the 48 hours comes in, because basically you have less than 24 hours for her to do that.
So she felt as though that number was proper when we sat down and met, was the 48 hours. That was not a number I came up with. I just helped come up with the process.
I guess I just see we already have a process, so I'm not sure where it's necessary for us to be able to have to add all the additional language, is what I'm saying.
So while we do have a process, we don't have, the clerk does not have a process that she was even instructed to follow. And she felt like this process would be able to actually make her job a little easier, because then she has, okay, so she does this, the packet comes, the paperwork comes back, and then she can actually collect information from the appointees, which is something that did not happen last time. Last time they were never able to give their information. They never were able to submit their proof of residence. Never.
They were notified well in advance because the rest of us were notified in advance.
They were not given the opportunity to submit their proof of residence to the clerk.
How did they not have an opportunity if they were notified in advance? I guess is where
They were notified, but if you go back and you remember, they were never said, okay, bring what you have in as proof of residence. And you can ask our clerk about that if you'd like to.
The clerk doesn't make policy, she just carries it out. Let's don't bring her.
Right, but I was trying to say what actually happened.
Oh, okay.
Not the policy, but what actually happened in this last instance. They were not afforded the opportunity to actually give their proof of residence. They were afforded the opportunity to be sworn in.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilperson Redd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, I think the sponsor said there's 4. Actually, we had 5 so far.
Oh, yeah.
That we filled. So, I'm gonna read it close. It might have an amendment too, but thank you for your work on this, because this looks like this is something that we use, actually. So, for future councils, maybe it's just one of those quirks, but I sat here for a long time, and only Gabe Segovia was the only one that moved for years. So,
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
I would like to say thank you to the sponsor. This is I appreciate it because it was, there was a lot of emails in the background, and many of the people running for office weren't necessarily aware of all the email in the back. It wasn't necessarily a transparent process. And so I appreciate the transparency and doing this up front. To also for the candidates, this also makes it very clear for the people who are applying for the to be a replacement for the ward. So I appreciate it and thank you very much.
Okay, anyone else?
So, oh, yeah.
You're recognized.
Okay, so the next piece was the actual swearing in piece. I was talking to Mr. Baker about that piece, and that was a piece that the mayor and Mr. Baker decided to do because we were in this situation that we had never been in any time at any given time. So after talking to Mr. Baker, and he kind of looking at it as if, why not swear everybody in? That was something that is a option that I can put in the legislation that we can look at, but I really wanted to bring it before you guys and see how you guys felt how that went at that point. And the swearing in would be because we cannot legislate good behavior. People can come in here and decide, I'm going to try to get into this office because that's what I'm going to do. We know that people have lived outside their word. We have dealt with that on this council. We know that people have lied. We have dealt with that on our council. So that swearing in piece would be a part of them swearing in and giving us the swearing in piece. They're swearing before the council that they do live where they're supposed to live, and all their information is correct on their residency. And if later on something comes up, that information can always be pulled back up. And the only reason why I bring that up is because we have dealt with that on this council.
You said swearing in. We're not talking about administering the oath of office.
No, we're
Okay.
talking about the swearing in that we
Swearing
did the last
of-
time.
Swearing that they live in a certain place and are
Yes.
registered. Okay.
That's what I'm talking about. Not
Okay.
swearing into the office, but swearing
Gotcha.
of the. And I thought that it went well, but I just wanted to see if you guys' take was the same as mine.
Councilperson Reynolds?
So you're saying that we all do it at every election and every appointment?
No, because we can't control what the commission does when we're coming into office. We can't control that, but we can control what happens here in our council chambers. So it would only be when we appoint somebody.
Because we had a special session to appoint the new election.
There's always a special session to appoint.
I'm just.
They appear at a regular session, make their intention known. They're required to appear before the council, as everybody knows. And then we call a special session within 14 days to elect and then swear them in immediately. Mr. Baker.
Yeah, just to facilitate, what we've talked about, Councilmember Allen, is just simply codifying in the code the process that we came up with, because there was a lot of questions swirling around who actually really does live and therefore qualifies within the ward and within the city for a period of 1 year. So all we're talking about doing is, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is drafting some additional language to supplement the language that she's already talked about, to codify that procedure that we follow, where we ask prospective candidates under oath, where do you live? How long do you live there?
Okay, anybody else? All right, we're now ready for mayor and council. Oh, I'm sorry.
There was one more thing that I talked about with Mr. Baker, and it's not in there yet. And it was just the first 2 times we did an appointment, we were able to deliberate in between votes. So we would vote on these people and these people, and these people should go on to the next round, and then we would be able to deliberate. And then the last one, we did not deliberate. Right now in our code, it doesn't say we can or we cannot. So I was wondering if that was something that you guys would look at, should we deliberate in between these sessions or should we not deliberate in between these sessions? We've done it both ways. Last time we didn't, the first 2 times we did. So if you guys can think about that, it's going before the Finance Committee next month, and it'll come before you again the month after that. But if you can give me a little bit of feedback on that deliberation thing, it would be greatly appreciated.
Councilperson Lovato?
No?
Thank you. Would that not go against sunshine laws to deliberate in between?
Yeah, we wouldn't be deliberating in private. It would
Right.
be a separate meeting, Mr. Baker?
Right, and I just want to make sure that the public understands that there was no prohibition. The chair didn't issue
Right.
any kind of ruling saying you couldn't. That's just the way it happened the last time. There was no real talk about them. It is correct. In the previous times, there was a lot of talk about them. So all she's talking about is just maybe codifying to make it clear, which, it is, you can do it already. You can talk about the candidates, but I think what she's looking for perhaps and some input is whether we want to have something actually written in this procedure, since we're looking at changing, amending it anyway, that makes it clear that in between every round of votes, you can talk about the applicants, at least the ones that are remaining, that are left to be voted on.
Now, Councilperson Lovato, you have the floor.
And
Now, we're not talking about among each other
Yeah, I was
outside
just-
of a public
I
meeting.
No,
just
we're in
wanted to
the
say, address something. I'm glad you said something. Councilman Allen, I know you didn't mean this. I'm sure you didn't. Correct me if I'm wrong. Don't send your comments about this prospective legislation to Councilmember Allen.
Oh, I was talking about right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell me now.
Yeah, tell her now, or you can discuss it in the future at executive session or at a vote, obviously, but, don't send private emails that violate the sunshine law, obviously.
What I'm saying is, tell me now if there's any thought about it so that I can be working on the legislation before it goes to the Finance Committee with Mr. Baker. That's what I'm saying. If you have any concerns about it, because this is the venue where we can talk about it. If you have any concerns, some people have some concerns. So if you have any concerns and it's like, no, we shouldn't really be deliberating in between each vote, then let me know. That's all
Councilperson Reynolds?
I appreciate the opportunity to deliberate because we did pause and we were about ready to leave, and then we deliberated and had conversations and had another vote. So in answer to your question, I appreciate the ability to request to deliberate and discuss the vote. I mean, if it's not, I thought it was just that we chose not to. So if it needs to be put in writing as an opportunity, then I would support that. I think it's important. And two, I don't know. I see other cities do this. We don't often co-sponsor bills. I don't know if you were interested in that or what that process looks like for us, but I would. I appreciate this bill. I appreciate how it is really putting transparency into the process for people. So if there was an opportunity to co-sponsor, I would co-sponsor.
Your co-sponsoring is your vote for, more or less. Councilperson Allen, anything else?
I do have one last thing. I want you guys to know that I hope we never have to appoint again. I hate the fact that a council member has to appoint another council member for another ward. However, I'm not changing this so that it works for us if we ever have to do it again. But 10 years from now, they might only have to do it once, and maybe it needs to be clearer. Because when we did it 4 times, we realized that it really wasn't as clear as we needed it to be. So that's why I'm working on this. It has nothing to do with anything else except for maybe when the mayor's not here anymore, us 12 aren't here anymore, Mr. Baker's not here anymore. We want it to be very clear how the process goes. Thank you.
Thank you. We're now ready for council Member comments, Councilperson McLaughlin, you're recognized for comments.
Thank you, Mayor. I missed the Finance Committee meeting Monday because I wasn't feeling well, but there's something I wanted to bring up. I didn't know if everybody's aware that the county passed a resolution to change the freeze amount, the senior tax freeze amount, for taxes. It was $42,890 a year as their income, and now it's $60,000, and that's effective past July 1st. And I'm just curious as to, did anybody contact the city about how that would affect us? And do we have any estimates about how much tax revenue that could ding us for this fiscal year?
First question first, the sponsor of that resolution at the county level did not. Mayor Golden's office reached out to me and told me it was coming, and I'll stop there. No, we don't have an estimate yet, but it will be an impact.
Right. Okay, I was frustrated. And I didn't know if my colleagues were aware of that took place, but it's definitely something that's going to affect our current budget.
Indeed.
Not
this-
okay, sorry.
next year.
Next year.
Right.
But still.
Other mayor or council member comments? I will say congratulations and thank you to our Finance and Revenue Department for another successful closeout to fiscal year 2023. And that today was the deadline and they closed on time, so thank you to them. Now we're ready for public comments. Any member of the public wish to address the council? Seeing none, Lieutenant Gill, is it still light outside? All right, we are adjourned.